Hey, 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 Mom Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Untying the Knot, where we talk through divorce and separation and everything that goes along with that. It's a lot of stuff, Tamara. We talk about a lot of stuff on this show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I am excited to dive in with you guys. I just want to let you know that we talk about the divorce defenders often on this show, and that is a team of professional women that Miranda and I are a part of that all handle something different in terms of divorce and supporting women. We yes, we will work with men as well, but we prefer women, don't we, Tamara?
Yes.
So we are supporting women through the process. And if you want to learn more about the divorce defenders or connect with us, then I just popped up a QR code above our heads here. You can just scan that code, and that's going to bring you to our Direct Me page, and you can learn a bit more about each and every one of us. So today we're going to dive into what Tamara does. And Tamara handles actually, you know what? Before I explain who you are, Tamara, I'm going to let you do it because you're going to do it a lot better than I do. So take it away, my friend.
So I am what is called a certified legal document preparer. So I am certified by the Supreme Court of Arizona to prepare legal documents for the public without the supervision of an attorney. So the biggest distinction between myself and an attorney is an attorney can go with clients, represent them in court. They can give legal advice. So they're more focused on legal strategy. Where legal document preparers like myself, we are more focused on document preparation accuracy, making sure everything is aligned with Arizona state statutes and making sure clients are prepared going into the courtroom on their own.
Awesome. And what a valuable service that is. I know that you're somewhat busy, aren't you?
This time of year is what we kind of call the divorce tsunami. So it has been quite busy at the beginning of this year.
Yeah. Statistically, it's definitely a lot higher at the beginning of the year, right? And why is that? Do we know? Is it people are just kind of waiting out the holidays or?
It's a number of reasons. Typically, yes, people who might be unhappy or they've talked about it, they want to get through the holidays. They don't want to uproot their families or create any hostility through the holidays. Or I have clients that are already divorced and maybe it was their first or second year through the holiday season and they didn't quite like how everything turned out. And so they want to go back and go into court and do some modifications. So there's kind of two different areas, but yeah, mainly just trying to get through the holidays, focus on the kids, maybe not create so much drama and upset.
Makes sense. At what point in the divorce process does it make sense for somebody to work with a legal document preparer instead of alongside an attorney?
So typically, but when you meet with an attorney and you pay a retainer, a big chunk of your retainer kind of goes through those preliminary documents. You've got your petition and you've got to meet with your attorney and do your case strategy. And so a big part of your retainer gets eaten up with just standard proceedings and filings. And those filings are really important just because they lay the groundwork for what you're going to be asking, because you can't start a case and just be extremely vague and then down the road be like, oh, well, I need this X, Y, and Z. So your foundation is really important. But if you don't necessarily know if the other party is going to get an attorney or if this is going to be an amicable situation, it's usually best practice, or I guess I wouldn't say best practice, but if you want to be more cost effective, I help clients get the ball rolling and get their foot in the door where, if the other party lawyers up or it becomes heavily litigated, then we have that conversation of, I'm not an attorney. I can't give you advice. If you're going to freeze up in the courtroom, because let's face it, talking to a judge is intimidating.
Yeah.
And, then at that point, we have the conversation with clients of, hey, it may be better for you to retain an attorney. And we have several referrals. I encourage clients to meet with several attorneys before they choose one.
Good advice, because personalities could make a big difference. Expertise, what an attorney's really good at might be important in this situation, depending on what it is. Is that why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Not, like you said, different personalities, different perspectives. I worked for one attorney once that said, everyone's interpretation of the law is an opinion. So
Mm,
just because what one attorney may feel is a good strategy, another attorney may feel that it's another strategy is better. So it's best to kind of get a bigger picture and see who you align with and the beliefs. If your attorney has the same beliefs and strategy as you do, because if you and your attorney are butting your heads and you guys don't have the same strategy, then I don't think it's a very good working relationship. And you should really trust your attorney because you're handling your finances, your future, your kids, your assets, everything that you've worked for.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up cost because one of the biggest fears that people have around divorce, in my opinion, and in my experience, is cost. So, how does legal document prep help make the process more affordable?
So, with my particular business, I work off of a flat fee. So, I have one fee for divorce with children and one fee for divorce without children. Um, so, as far as cost goes, you can budget, you know what to expect, you know what you're getting. You're not going to have this unexpected $300 bill because you spent an hour long phone call with me on the phone.
Mhm.
Um, with attorneys, the going rate from what I'm seeing for your average retainer with an attorney is anywhere from 3,000 to I've seen them up to $8,000 for a retainer. And yeah, things have expanded over the last couple years with um, law firms offering payment programs through third-party lenders and things like that. But for stay-at-home moms or individuals that are lower income, that 3 to 8,000 is really hard to come by. So
Mhm.
all of my services and packages are under $1,000 collectively. If it's start to finish through a litigated case, we'll go over that $1,000 threshold. But preliminarily, you can get your foot in the door and we can get you started under $1,000.
Awesome. I know that is so helpful for many out there. What kinds of cases are usually a good fit for doc prep? And then when is it not the right option?
So, the most ideal cases that I see a lot are amicable divorces. So the parties are able to co-parent successfully. They know what they want. They have the same visions for their kids. They just realize they're better as co-parents than as spouses.
Yeah.
So clients will meet with me and they will say, okay, here's all our agreements. And Arizona has a wonderful summary consent decree process where everything is all filed at once. Petition, response, final decree. There's a statutory waiting period of 60 days for the divorce to be finalized. But once that's done, divorces are typically done within 90 days.
Hmm.
The other side of things is just to get your foot in the door. You don't necessarily know if this is going to be really heavily litigated. You don't know if the other side is going to afford an attorney, but you want to make sure you have a good foundation with your paperwork and things aren't missed. The types of cases that I would highly encourage to obtain an attorney are my high asset cases where you've got multiple financial accounts, multiple properties. It doesn't mean that I can't do those things, but where you really have to get into tracing those financial assets. You've commingled sole and separate property. Things like that is where I really encourage clients to possibly seek an attorney if they have the resources, just because you want to make sure you get a fair and equitable division through the marital community.
Yeah. Makes sense. What does the process look like when somebody starts to work with you? What can they expect step by step?
Yeah, so typically I get a phone call and clients are telling me they've contemplated divorce. They're speaking about it with their significant other. Um, or they know they need to get a divorce, they just don't know where to go. And so I always try and educate my clients first. I don't want to come across as a salesperson or just
Right.
here's my prices, this is what we do.
Right.
So I want to explain to clients, if things are amicable, this is what the process looks like. I kind of just how I briefly did with the summary consent decree process. um, and if they remain unrepresented, what that looks like. And if you're going to be litigated and you're not fully amicable, you file your petition, the other party has to be served, they have a response time, And then the court usually sets unrepresented couples for mediation. So I educate my clients on what the process looks like for divorce with or without children. And then once they have that understanding, I explain my fees, how it works, when things are due. And then if they want to move forward, I send them over a retainer agreement for services. It breaks down all the costs. So everything is black and white, no hidden fees or unexpected costs. And then I provide them with an intake. And I send that both at the same time, have clients fill it out. If they have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. And up until this point, there's no cost. I don't expect clients to pay me just to get information.
Mm-hmm.
The document preparer program was created to make legal aid affordable and available to the public. So I want to make sure clients are educated before they pay anything up front. So once the fee agreement and an intake is back to me, that's when we move forward with any costs up front.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. What are the most common mistakes you see people are if they were trying to handle divorce paperwork on their own?
So one of the biggest ones is when the other party doesn't respond. And that is called the default process in Arizona. And a court cannot enter in judgments with anything that wasn't put in the initial petition. So if I have a client who filed a petition and they kept everything really vague, child support according to the guidelines, parenting time, best interest of the kid, or we'll work on it, or we'll agree to it. And then they serve the other party doesn't respond. They ask the court to enter in a default judgment, but then in their final papers, they're like, well, the other parent can only have them every other weekend, and I want $500 a month in child support. Well, unfortunately, the court can't enter in a judgment for any of those things because the other party was not notified when they were served that these were the things that you were going to ask for. So when I initially meet with clients and talk to them, I tell them, this, your partner, your spouse better than I do. So if you file this, do you think that they are going to respond, or do you think they're just going to walk away? And, when they tell me, no, they're not going to care, they're going to walk away, then I tell them, okay, we have to get everything down. We have to cross our T's, dot our I's, make sure all the details are in the initial paperwork, because if you do pursue default, the judge will not sign off on any specific details that the other party wasn't notified of.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really big one that I often see, because I do have clients calling me and saying, I tried to do the default and I keep submitting it and the judge keeps rejecting it and I don't know why. And so I take a look at the papers, and what they submitted and served is completely different than what they're asking the judge for.
Oh.
So that is a big one with clients. And then essentially they're starting the process all over. They have to amend their petition. They have to reserve the other party. And so it becomes really frustrating, and it's a difficult process. The other one is, kind of similar to that, but it's asking for things up front. So Arizona is a no fault state. So if there is infidelity in a marriage, you can't fault the spouse for being unfaithful. However, there is a marital waste claim that you can make, but that claim has to be made at the very beginning of the divorce. You can't later on down the road say, oh, well, my spouse had vacations and expensive dinners and bought gifts for this other person. The marital community should be reimbursed for it. So it's things like that that are extremely important to put. Even if you don't know it exists, it's better to ask for it up front and then not ask for it later.
Great advice. Thank you. What do you wish more people knew or understood before they file for divorce?
I would say the difference between sole and separate and community property.
Ooh, good one. Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time explaining procedurally what sole and separate is and what is community property debt. A lot of clients come to me and they're like, well, I just have a credit card in my name. So that's my debt. Or they just had a car in their name and that's their car. They're responsible for it. So procedurally, you have to look at it. And I say procedurally because as a document preparer, I can't give legal advice. So
Right.
I have to give clients the definition of sole and separate and what's considered community. I can't advise them whether it should or shouldn't be. I give them the definition, and based on that, they make their own interpretation of what it is. So sole and separate is sole and separate so long as it stays sole and separate. You don't use paycheck money to make your car payment. You don't use paycheck money to pay the mortgage.
Mm.
Once you do that, the funds are now commingled. The marital community has benefited from that vehicle or from that house. And so that's where things get in the gray area of what is sole and separate and what is community. So it's extremely important for clients to be educated, especially when they're filling out my intake. I've had a lot of clients, they're like, well, I had my car before we were married. So it's, I'm not going to put it on here because I had it before we were married. Well, was the vehicle paid off? Because if it wasn't and your spouse helped make car payments, it could be constituted as something that needs to be divided in the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So just things like that are really important. And a lot of people is with the misconception of sole and separate and community.
Makes sense. What about when children are involved? What should parents be thinking about before they file?
So they want to think about, what are holidays going to look like? What
Mm.
works best with the kids? All parents in Arizona, when filing for divorce, they are required to take a parent information program. There's tons of different programs. There's online, there's in person. I have a couple that I personally recommend. Maricopa County, Pinal County, they have on their websites different programs. But it's really important that you pay attention to that parenting program because it talks about a lot of needs for kids and what to consider. One of them is the age of your kids. Arizona typically recommends that a child shouldn't go more than the number of days equal to their age away from one of their parents. So if you have younger kids and your goal is to have equal time, do you want a 5-2-2-5 schedule? Where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the next week it flip-flops.
Mm-hmm.
You want a more consistent schedule, week on, week off. Realistically, what's going to work for parents and for kids? You want to think about holidays. A lot of people get hung up on the dates and they've got to have Christmas Eve and they've got to have Christmas Day or Easter. And, they're just dates. You can make a holiday anytime in your household.
Right.
So it's, really think about that pick up, drop off, down the road. How are you going to handle a teenager getting a car? How are you going to handle insurance and driving privileges and, things like that? How are you going to, obviously couples are getting divorced for a reason. And even though things are amicable, you can't leave things vague. You're getting a divorce for a reason. So yes, the hope is that parents can co-parent and be successful co-parenting and be flexible with one another, but disagreements are going to happen. How are those disagreements going to be handled? Are you going to leave it up to the teacher when you have an educational disagreement? Are you going to leave it up to the doctor? Or is one parent going to take precedence over the other? In your holiday plan, you want to take your kids on vacation. What happens if both parents plan their vacation for the same week? Who's going to
Yeah.
take precedence or who's going to have priority in what year? So it's just thinking about those little things now when you're going through it versus having to go and modify in a couple years. And maybe it's a bad business model for me, but I want clients to get divorced and have a solid parenting plan that will last them a long time. I do not want my clients in court every 12 months. It's
Yeah.
not fun and it's hard on kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure we have all of those things covered, and the checklist and my intake that I provide clients at the beginning talks about all those things and makes those suggestions.
I love that. And I love that you have that process in place to make things easier for others. In your experience, what helps people move through divorce with the least amount of damage, financially, emotionally, you know, insert damage here?
That's a hard one. It really just depends on how things are between the parties. Um, Court orders are court orders. You follow those court orders, and if you don't, there will be consequences. And when you don't follow those court orders, um, there's clients are open to sanctions, attorneys' fees. So if you are ordered to exchange your children at 5 o'clock, you need to be there and exchange your kid, unless by a court order, you file an emergency order and you have permission from the court to not follow those orders. But it's extremely important. And even at the preliminary of filing everything, most people are not aware that a preliminary injunction goes into place the day that the petitioning party files, it goes against them. And the day the other party is served, that preliminary injunction goes into effect on the other party. And what that preliminary injunction explains is that the children cannot be removed out of the state of Arizona without permission. Nobody can be taken off of health insurance, car insurance, anything like that. Essentially, it puts a freeze on the entire marital world until any other orders are put into place. And that's automatic in Arizona. So, when couples are arguing and one party takes off with the child, they're violating the preliminary injunction. Someone gets mad and they take them off health insurance. That's a violation of the preliminary injunction. So it's really important to follow those court orders, follow the procedures. Otherwise, you're looking at more financial consequence.
Yeah, for sure. I can see how that would be the case. This is my last question for you. And then you'll have an opportunity to share whatever it is that I didn't cover with you while we were talking. But if somebody is sitting in the maybe stage and they're not sure if they're ready to file, what do you tell them?
When I get people that are contemplating it, they want to know what the process looks like. How messy can it get? How expensive can it get? So we have those conversations. I explain my fees. I explain how retainers work with attorneys, what they're possibly looking at. And I just educate them. I feel like the tipping point of maybe and going through it really tips over to the pursuing it once they have the education. And like I said earlier, I don't charge to educate my clients on what the process looks like. So once they feel, any of us, any human's going to feel better about going into something or starting something when you feel like you're prepared and you know what you're going into. So if they're coming at me with a maybe, I just ask them, are things amicable? Are things really bad? Are you living together? Are you living separate? And based on those preliminary questions, I educate clients on the process and what it looks like. I just had a call 3 weeks ago from a client. She said, we don't have the money for an attorney. I don't know if we're going to work through things. I don't know if we're going to get a divorce. We're living together. We have a house together, but I don't know if I should move out. He should move out. I couldn't tell her whether or not she should or shouldn't move out, but I told her, if things are amicable, this is what the process looks like. And I really didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, I just educated her. Maybe she'll call, maybe she won't. And 2 weeks later, I got an email saying, okay, I talked with them and we're ready to move forward now that we know what it looks like.
That makes sense. Oftentimes, and I'm sure you've been in that position as well, and I have too, where if we don't know what the next steps are, then we kind of freeze, right?
Mm-hmm. The unknown
so I appreciate it. Really is scary. I agree. And I appreciate that you offer education and information at a real cost-effective rate, Tamara. Can't get more cost-effective than nothing, huh?
At least for the beginning part, yes. To know what it looks like, yes. I feel like, they can go online, they can read it. But I mean, I remember as a paralegal 10 years ago getting my degree, I looked at things and I felt like I was reading Chinese. And so, sometimes just talking to another person and hearing it out of their mouth, it clicks a little bit better versus something that you go and pull up on the self-help website and you see 60 something pages of all this stuff that you don't understand what it means.
I totally agree with you. And oftentimes when we are feeling unsettled within ourselves, we tend to lose our ability to be resourceful. Whereas we might be a pretty resourceful person, normally when we're in the high stress zone. I've noticed even with myself, it's harder to access that. So thank you for being that person for those out there. Anything else? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I don't think so. I mean, we talked about the different routes when things are amicable versus when they're not. There's still two great options for either scenario. The only other thing that I really like to touch base on is once couples are divorced, they need to start replanning their lives and seeing how that new look is. So that's kind of where the second part of my business ties in with estate planning. So, if you're married and you have some estate planning done now that you're divorced, most of those documents need to be updated. So, I get clients or help clients through the divorce process and then help them get a good foundation for estate planning and future planning, when they start their new chapter of their life, being a single parent or, just single in general all over again, regardless if they have kids or not. So, that's another part of my business that I like to offer clients where they're, I help them and now I don't have to go and send them off to somebody else. We've already built a relationship over a really hard time in their life. And so I want to continue to help clients be successful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for all that you do for women and families out there. It's definitely a lot of value. If you guys are finding value in these videos, please do us a favor and click subscribe on the platform that you are watching or listening to this on. That just sends us a signal, gives us a big warm hug and says, yes, you are providing value to the community here. Keep on doing it. So if you could do that for me, I appreciate it. And we will keep on showing up here with value for our community of mamas. So thank you again, Tamara, as part of the Divorce Defenders. I so appreciate having you on the team. And again, thank you for all that you do for our moms out there. All right, guys. Check out, actually, I do want to mention, I am so sorry, Miranda isn't with us today. Miranda was unable to make this pod, so I told Tamara it's just going to be her and I today, and she didn't mind a bit, but we wish Miranda well. She will be back next month if you're wondering why she's not here. If you want to check out any of our previous episodes over on our YouTube channel, the handle is @MomNationUSA. Scroll down just a little ways, you will see the playlist in blue, which is Miranda and I on Untying the Knot. We have several episodes that if this is something you're contemplating, you definitely want to catch up on. If you prefer to listen podcast style, you can find them at Mom Nation Talk Radio on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you again, Tamara. It was wonderful having you, and we'll see you around.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or disconnected from yourself? Miranda Ray offers one-on-one private sessions designed to help you reconnect with yourself. Gain tools for emotional healing, build confidence, and step into your power with compassionate guidance every step of the way. You deserve peace. You deserve clarity. You deserve to feel good again. Let Miranda help you get there. Take the first step toward a brighter, more balanced you. Reach out to Miranda now.